Leo had always believed that scavenging through abandoned space stations was a lonely profession, but he'd never imagined it would lead him to save royalty, let alone alien royalty from the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy. The distress signal had been faint, almost imperceptible among the cosmic radiation that saturated Sector 7. Leo's ship, the Wanderer, picked it up purely by chance as he navigated through the debris field of what had once been the Meridian colony. He'd been searching for salvageable tech, maybe some rare metals, anything to pay off his mounting debts. Instead, he found a small escape pod tumbling through space, its hull breached and life support failing. "This is Salvager Leo Martinez to unidentified vessel," he transmitted, maneuvering closer. "Do you require assistance?" The response came in a language his translator struggled to process, a melodic series of tones that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his mind. When the translation finally appeared on his screen, his blood ran cold. "Help, daughter of Zathara, dying." Zathara. Everyone in the galaxy knew that name. The Quantum Empress, ruler of the Celestial Dominion, whose fleets commanded a third of known space, whose technology was centuries beyond anything humanity had achieved, whose wrath had reduced entire civilizations to cosmic dust. Leo should have turned away. Getting involved with Dominion politics was a death sentence for a human scavenger. But as he caught a glimpse through the pod's viewport of a small, luminescent figure convulsing inside, something in him refused to abandon a child to the void. "I'm coming to get you," he said, engaging his ship's rescue protocols. The extraction was dangerous. The pod systems were completely foreign to him, and one wrong move could trigger its self-destruct mechanism. Leo worked carefully, using his mechanical expertise and a healthy dose of improvisation to manually override the hatch. When it finally opened, he found himself staring at Bella, the Queen's daughter. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Her skin shimmered with an inner light that shifted through colors Leo had no names for. Her eyes were vast pools of starlight, and delicate crystalline structures grew from her temples like a crown. But she was also clearly a child, no more than 10 in human years, and she was suffocating. Leo didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his ship and into his emergency medical bay. His equipment was primitive compared to Dominion technology, but he worked with what he had. The translator eventually helped him understand that her species breathed a combination of gases that Earth's atmosphere lacked. He jury-rigged his life support system, mixing compounds from his engineering supplies until the atmospheric readings matched what the translator suggested. For 3 agonizing hours, Leo fought to keep Bella alive. He monitored her vital signs through instruments that weren't designed for her physiology, adjusted gas mixtures, and even used his ship's fabricator to create a specialized breathing apparatus. His hands shook with exhaustion and fear that he was doing more harm than good, fear that the most powerful being in the galaxy would blame him for her daughter's death. But slowly, miraculously, Bella's condition stabilized. Her luminescence grew brighter and her eyes fluttered open. When she looked at Leo, recognition and gratitude flooded through their makeshift communication link. "You saved me," her thoughts whispered into his mind. Before Leo could respond, his ship's sensors screamed a warning. Multiple quantum signatures were materializing around him. In seconds, he was surrounded by dozens of Dominion warships, each one capable of vaporizing his tiny vessel with a single shot. A holographic projection filled his cockpit, Queen Zathara herself, towering and terrible, her form radiating power that made Leo's instruments fritz and spark. "Human," the Queen's voice resonated through dimensions Leo didn't know existed. "You have my daughter." "She's safe," Leo managed, his voice barely steady. "I found her escape pod failing. I did what I could to help her." The Queen's multidimensional gaze seemed to peer into his very soul, examining every choice he'd made, every motive behind his actions. Bella appeared beside him, still weak but animated, and began communicating rapidly with her mother in their native language. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Leo prepared himself for death, or worse, the Dominion had technologies that made death seem merciful. Instead, Queen Zathara spoke words that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Leo Martinez of Earth, you saved my daughter when you could have claimed the ransom her rescue would have brought. You risked your life and exhausted your resources for a being you'd never met, from a species not your own. For this, I offer you a choice that will shock your world and mine. The hologram shifted, showing 3 distinct images. First, wealth beyond imagination. Enough credits to purchase entire star systems, to live in luxury for 1,000 lifetimes. Leo's heart raced. His debts, his struggles, everything could be solved instantly. Second, technology. I will grant you access to Dominion innovations. Your species will advance by centuries overnight. Medical cures, faster-than-light travel, unlimited energy. You could be the savior of humanity. Leo thought of his sister dying of a disease Earth couldn't cure, of the colonies struggling with failing life support, of all the problems that plagued his species. Third, and here the Queen's voice took on a tone that made reality itself seem to hold its breath, I offer you kinship. The Dominion has never recognized another species as equals. We have always stood alone, superior and isolated. But you, Leo Martinez, have shown me that nobility exists beyond our borders. Accept this, and humanity joins the celestial dominion not as subjects, but as partners. Your species will have a voice in galactic affairs, protection under our fleets, and a future among the stars. The transmission was being broadcast across every Dominion world, every allied species, every corner of space where beings watched and wondered. Leo could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. Whatever he chose would reshape the galaxy's political landscape forever. But as he looked at Bella, still recovering in his medical bay, he realized the choice was simple. He hadn't saved her for a reward. He'd done it because it was right. Your Majesty, Leo said, his voice growing stronger, I didn't save Bella expecting anything in return. But if I must choose, I choose kinship. Not for myself, but because I believe that if we're going to survive out here among the stars, we need to recognize that compassion and decency aren't limited by species or form. We need to be better than our worst impulses. Together. For a moment, Queen Zathara was utterly still. Then, impossibly, she smiled, a gesture that seemed to warm the void itself. Then it is done. Let it be known across all space. Humanity is recognized as kin to the Dominion, and Leo Martinez, savior of the air, will be remembered as the bridge between our peoples. The news exploded across the galaxy like a supernova. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive backwater dwellers suddenly scrambled to establish diplomatic relations. The United Earth government, shocked and unprepared, found itself thrust onto the galactic stage. Historians would debate for centuries whether this was humanity's greatest triumph or most dangerous gamble. But in that moment, as Dominion ships began escorting the Wanderer toward Earth as an honored vessel, Leo simply sat with Bella, teaching her a simple human game to pass the time. She laughed, a sound like crystal bells, and he realized that perhaps the real shock wasn't the political implications of the Queen's offer. It was the simple truth that kindness, offered freely and without expectation, could change the universe. As stars streaked past his viewport and human space came into view, Leo understood that his life as a lonely scavenger was over. Ahead lay diplomacy, politics, and responsibilities he'd never imagined. But he'd made his choice, and he wouldn't change it for anything. After all, he'd learned something that day that the whole galaxy was still coming to understand. The measure of a civilization wasn't in its weapons or technology, but in its willingness to help those in need. And sometimes, that simple act of compassion could shock an entire galaxy into being something better.